tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to continue with our ordinary lecture series on Chittaja Rupas. But today I decided again to redo the Kaya Viññatti lesson because I felt it's better to explain it with another, taking a new approach, because that Rūpa is very vital in understanding the Theravada teachings. So I have reproduced this handout and sent it to you. So this handout is more refined and more detailed with the references than the previous handout. So you can remove the previous handout and refer to this new handout because this explains more explicitly and clearly about the functions and the phenomena, the nature of Kaya Viññatti and its functions. So as we discussed, I'll be doing the same lecture, in the same topic again, what I did last week. Kaya Viññatti is the bodily intimation. So this Viññatti is very vital in our day-to-day lives, as according to the perspective of Theravada, because it facilitates our activities according to our mind, according to our desires and wishes. So this Kaya Viññatti, if you look into the term, it signifies Kaya Viññatti. Kaya Viññatti. It implies the meaning that a nature or a reality that expresses the intention of the doer. That is the terminology, the meaning of the word. But this Viññatti, if we try to explain this based on the function, a new way to think is a person. Now, first of all, we should know we are made out of two elements, mind and body. And the body itself, the body alone cannot do any physical activity because it doesn't have any intention of doing so. The body is constituted with basic elements such as Patavi, Apo, Tejo, Vayu, which have the characteristics of getting molested when struck by certain other physical attributes or physical elements, and each of them possess their own intrinsic nature such as hardness, heat, cohesion, bloating nature, and so forth. They do not possess any mental attributes such as thinking, intention. They even doesn't have an object, which is in philosophically we call intentionality. Philosophically, intentionality doesn't mean of being with an intention. Intentionality means having an object, something to refer to, or the idea, something which is referring to knowing something, the aboutness of the consciousness. So it's something related to the mental aspect. So Rūpa doesn't have these attributes. So it is not conscious, so it doesn't have the intentions of doing anything. Then sometimes one may consider that physical things such as hard disks or computers have a certain memory and also can perform certain activities based on the instructions that we give. According to Theravada teachings, these are merely physical activities. They are not mental activities. They are physical activities. They are not even non-physical activities because they are the functions of the material thing. Then, so therefore the Rūpa doesn't have the intention of doing anything. Therefore, the Rūpa cannot move by itself. Then when we come to the Nama, the mentality, it doesn't have the physical attributes to perform a physical activity. The first and foremost among them is not being an extended reality. Extended reality means being a reality or thing that consumes space, which is extended in the space. Extended means which is spread in the space. So if you take a ball, it is spread in the space in a it has its own shape, but its extended nature can be understood, even a box or whatever. In our known world, we have always three-dimensional things. We don't have two-dimensional or one-dimensional things. So always 3D stuff are extended things. So in order to perform the activity of moving or a physical activity, something has to be extended. So the mind is a non-extended reality. So it doesn't suffices to be called moving. It may have the intention to move, but it cannot move by itself because it is not something that moves. It's not physical. It's a non-physical entity. Therefore, the mind and matter both alone cannot do any activity. Only when they are combined together, or only when they act as a one unit, then they are able to perform physical and verbal activities. Here we are mostly focused on physical activities. Then the mind and the matter, which is one of the most difficult philosophical questions to be answered, the mind-body interaction. So there the prevailing thought in the philosophy is that the mind the mind cannot influence the body. Only some believe that the mind is an outcome of the functioning of the body. Some eliminate even the idea of the mind and just say there are just physical elements in the world. And the most religions who believe in the soul or consciousness accepts the fact that believes in the idea that mind is influencing the body and the body also influences the mind. There is an interchangeable mind-body interaction going on. Right, so we are not in a position to discuss about this topic. Our responsibility to explain how physical activities are explained or can be detailed according to the Theravada teachings. So now the person is here. We may call it the person. Then he has intention to do so, and then he acts. For example, raise his arm or do some activity. Acting or work. Acting here means performing some activity. So the person first has an intention. An intention to act. Then we see an outcome of acting. How do the Theravadians explain this phenomena? So when we have an intention, we do act. This is common sense in one aspect, because we all believe, even in the legal system, it's an accepted norm that we behave based on our intentions. So in order for some activity to be a crime or not, in most of the cases, there should be an intention of performing that crime. Or otherwise, he should be at least aware of what was happening. In some cases, negligence can also be a crime. But in most of the cases, the person has to act upon his intentions. Then only we can say, even according to the karma, the person has done a very bad deed. Right? The person has done a very bad deed, very, very bad activity, like he had the intention of doing it. He did it purposefully, deliberately. Then we have the intention, suddenly we see the person acting. Or we had intention and we are acting upon this. So how does this phenomena is explained? Intention being a mentality is not extended. So it cannot have any, seems like it cannot have any logical influence on the Rūpa. So what it does is, according to the teachings, this intention creates or generates Rūpas, Chittaja Rūpas in the body, especially in these relevant body parts which are to be moved, right? So these, it's better to draw it in the second step, in the intermediate step. Now, when the intention arises, for example, this was the hand, when the intention arises, kalapas, some kalapas with abandoned vayu arises in the relevant body parts. Vayu has the bloating nature and also the pushing nature. It also flows. That's why, as Theravadins explain, the air moves all around the atmosphere. In any, it could flow into any direction. So every activity is, every physical activity can be said as an outcome of air element, vayu dhatu. So this intention, based on this intention, some Rūpa kalapas arise in the relevant area to be moved, intended to be moved, and these kalapas possess abandoned vayu within the kalapa and interkalapa between the kalapas. We have discussed about this in detail in the previous lessons. So now this vayu, this kalapas with abandoned vayu generates the sufficient force to move the physical body. Now these kalapas are generated by this intention. Didn't have a intention means the mind didn't have. Now it had the intention of moving the body, but it didn't have intention of creating the kalapas. It happens as a natural outcome of phenomenon. When someone gets the intention to move the body, automatically, naturally, some kalapas with vayu arise in the relevant area. And the next thing is, now this vayu could have moved to any direction, because vayu can flow. We know air can flow to any direction. Mostly it goes to the area where there is a less pressure. That's how we normally explain scientifically, right? It goes into a place where there is no pressure. But even if we keep air in an enclosed area, the particles naturally go and hit on the surface of the enclosement. So it goes and hit on this surface. So therefore air is, because there is no interparticle bondage in a body of air. Scientifically, that is why the air particles are freely moving, unlike the liquid particles which are bound to each other in a certain level. So air has the nature of moving. When abundant air is produced or arises in the relevant area of the body part, it could have moved or pushed, made the force to any direction. Then what happens? This air should move. In order for us to have accurate physical activities, this air should move according to the intention. Otherwise, while we intend to stand, the body may lie down or body may start to move differently. So if there is no interaction between the mind and body, if there is no properly functioning or good interaction between the mind and the body, we will not be able to perform physical activities as we intend. So therefore there should be some sort of activity. Now, Theravadians don't say the mind directly influences the physical body and make it to move, cause the movement. What they are suggesting is the intention produces chittaja rupas first with abundant vayu in the relevant body parts, and then that vayu creates the pressure on the already existing utuja body, this physical body. Then it starts to move. The physical body cannot move the mind cannot just make a strange force to push the body. It creates some vayu and then that vayu pushes the body. Then even philosophically the question is still there. How could mind, a non-material mind, produce material vayu? So therefore the question is still not solved. So now technically what is happening according to Theravadians, if the intention was to lift the hand, vayu should behave according to intention, so it's under the influence of this consciousness or intention. It's under the influence of this intention. So what happens, influenced by this intention, this vayu starts to move towards the intended direction. So instead of flowing into another direction or opposite direction or any other direction, the vayu starts to create the force towards the accepted or wanted direction. So as a result, when the intention is to lift the hand, vayu makes the push upwards rather than downwards. Then due to this push, the body starts to move. So that is the Theravadian explanation. It's a very simple explanation actually. So then the thing is, why did vayu move according to its intention? Because there was some influence. There was a certain modification which occurred in the vayu due to the consciousness. That modification is called kaya viññati. It's not a concretely produced matter. Vayu is concretely produced. It arises. Vayu arises and vanishes. It is a nippanna rūpa. It's concretely produced matter. But that matter is modified by the consciousness. This modification starts from the moment of its genesis. That's true. It arises. When it arises, at the same time, this modification happens together with the modification. The vayu arises together with the modification. There's no because intention was to lift the hand, and the vayu which arises with it cannot avoid its nature. It is intention. So the vayu arises together with the modification. But then what happens is, this influence will be lost when the consciousness passes away. So the vayu that arises is modified by the consciousness. It's influenced by the consciousness, because if I say it's modified, mean the modification the modified nature should exist even after the consciousness has passed away. But what happens according to Theravadians is, after the consciousness passes away, this modification is not seen there. But the result of the modification exists. That is, vayu is being directed towards a certain direction, then it starts to flow into that direction. So kaya viññati is not a concretely produced matter, but vayu dhatu is a concretely produced matter. What the consciousness does it influences this vayu dhatu. That influence itself is called kaya viññati. It can be said as a certain change which happens in the Vayu Dhatu, on the Vayu Dhatu, or upon those Kalapas. And next thing that we should keep in mind, as I already explained, this Chitta, consciousness, and the Vayu Dhatu. These are the Kalapas, for example. Kalapas. So these Kalapas are, now if the Chitta had the intention of lifting the hand, these Kalapas are also modified. Then, next moment, Chitta arises and passes away. Chitta arises and passes away. Sorry. Then this Viññati also passes away together with the consciousness. If I draw this, many Rūpa Kalapas occur with the consciousness. If I draw 4 Kalapas, these 4 Kalapas are also modified. Then these Kalapas starts to exist even in the second mind moment. In the second mind moment. Then it appears in third mind, still continues, still for 17 mind moments, it continues. From the second mind moment, we don't see the modification. But the Kalapas exist for another 16 mind moments. During the one mind moment, first mind moment, we can see the modification. We can see the modification. So, due to this modification, since it's modified, the result. Now, for instance, there is a child in front of me. I just forcefully make him to turn towards one direction. So I hold him and I turns him. So this is the influence. His turning, my force onto his body. This is the influence. If I am similar to the consciousness, and this child is the Vayu Dhatu, I'm making a certain influence of force on him. So his posture changes. The direction he's looking at it changes. Now, instead of looking in this direction, he starts to look at this direction. So this happens in one single act. Then I may leave him and go away. Still the child who was initially facing this direction is now facing another direction. So the child may still exist even I am gone. But the influence of the mind, what I did, the outcome, the result of my activity still persists. It's not something that the result of the activity doesn't mean there is something new in the child. No. The child's way of the direction he was looking has changed. It's nothing, the child himself has undergone no change. It's only the direction is changed. So Kaya Viññati, what Kaya Viññati does is actually done by the consciousness. What is Kaya Viññati then? Kaya Viññati is the force or the modification which happens in the child's body. That is the turning of the body. The child turns. Why is it? Because I have put some force on the child's body and I have made a turn. Made him to move. Or his direction is altered. So therefore, Kaya Viññati is something, an influence of the Rūpa by the consciousness, and that influence is not seen after the Chitta has passed away. So my influence of the child's body is found as long as I am holding the child and moving. After I have taken the hand away, then there's no such a ongoing influence upon the body from myself. I have made the influence, I have made the impact, and then that's it. So the child is now, as long as the child is standing there, he'll be looking at this direction. So likewise, when the chitta influences the rupas, vayu dhatu, after the chitta has passed away, this rupa is now acting as changed by the chitta. The influence is currently not found there, but the outcome of the influence, what has happened to the rupa, still exists. It means it's directed towards a new direction. Then what happens? The new kalapas which arise would happen in the intended direction. So the body part starts to move. Body part starts to move. So that is how Theravadians explain the functioning of Rūpa, the Kaya Viññati. So Kaya Viññati, intention and the activity. Intention was there, activity is there. So what is the bridge? How do we link these two? According to Cartesian dualism, when the self has an intention, the body moves. They call it Cartesian souls. Souls are capable of moving a physical body. According to Theravadians, there is no soul, it's just a consciousness and the mentalities that exist, and they alone cannot make any change in the body. What they do is they produce certain chittaja kalapas, and those kalapas move the body. They create the pressure to move the body. So that is the function, that is the explanation. But still, someone can ask a question, isn't this solving the problem of mind-body interaction? I don't think so. Why is that? Still the question remains. The physical force is made on the body by another physical element, which got created due to the non-physical element, consciousness. So we have to still show a relationship between the physical and the non-physical things. Physical and the non-physical things. Based on the causal closure, as explained by Western philosophers, closure, because in order for activity to happen, there should be some sort of energy transfer. As conservation of energy, no energy can be created in the world. That is the accepted norm in the physical science. So new energy is created. Energy can turn into matter and matter may turn into energy, but if you take all, even including matter, the energy in the entire universe is static. It cannot be increased or decreased. That's how, but the entropy does change, but energy level doesn't change. So if we are talking about something newly arising due to an intention, then still it violates the physical law, because you are creating new thing out of nothing. Out of nothing means consciousness was there as a supporting factor for the creation, but in the end it has happened newly. So it's a new input, a new energy input to the universe, as the physical scientist would say. Some may talk about virtual particles. Can't it be like virtual particles arising? But still, the virtual particles come out of the Higgs field, right? It's a Higgs field. So the energy was already there, which got into, which became a particle. So then, if you are about to explain this scientifically, we have to go into the fields where due to which the particles are created, right? So still this is not explaining scientifically, I mean, it's not explaining how the mind-body interaction could happen, and there's a bigger problem here, because Cartesian souls, they talked about soul influencing the body directly, so the body starts to move. Still the causal closer is there, the issue is there. But here we are talking about a creation of matter due to a non-physical entity, which leads to more complications if you look into this scientifically. So that's not our purpose to discuss this issue. But here what we need to know is Theravadians advocate, because science has not understood everything as it is, though it has progressed so much in its success, but still there are many things to be observed, to be investigated. So anyway, according to Theravadians, new Rūpas are produced by the intention, and those Rūpas are influenced by the intention. That influence is called Kaya Viññati. Right? So that's the first explanation. I shall read 2.1. Kaya Viññati is the modification caused by mind in Chittaja Vayu Dhatu to facilitate the happening of physical actions according to the intention of the mind. That's very important. According to the intention of the mind. Now, do every action happens according to our intentions, physical intentions? Sometimes not, because a person who is being paralyzed still may have the intention to move his arm, but it may not. The thing is, the physical structure doesn't support. So the physical movements are not only because of intention of Vayu Dhatu, the already existing body, the Uttuja Rūpas, already existing means the structure, it also arises and passes away momentarily, that's a different case. But this physical, rough, solid body should also be in a suitable status or a stage or a suitable state in order for the physical activities to happen. If there are defects in our muscles, if there are any issues in our body, even though the intention happens, our body may not move. So therefore, it's not only intention and the Vayu Dhatu which does the activity, they are the main force. They can be said as the reason for the physical activity, but the physical body should also be in a status or stage that facilitates these activities. Body without mind cannot perform any physical action, it even cannot move. The mere physical elements do not have any urge in acting. The urge we observe within us to work is found in mentalities, that is a different element. But mere mentalities also cannot act physically, as they do not possess physical attributes such as extended nature. This defect of mentalities in doing physical acts is overcome by producing Chittaja Rūpa. So that is how, according to Theravada teaching, that is how this defect is overcome, because it is a non-physical entity and this is a physical entity. Both of them cannot work alone, but still there is a problem of interaction. How could a non-physical element cause a force in a physical element? So what is happening? This intention is producing some physical stuff that could make a force on the physical body. So this defect is defects of mentalities in doing physical acts is overcome by producing Chittaja Rūpas. Mentalities fulfill the intention of doing physical activities by producing Chittaja Rūpas, but the intention doesn't have a desire to produce Chittaja Rūpas. So when it has the desire to move the limbs, that desire is fulfilled. We can say it's fulfilled by this phenomena of producing Chittaja Rūpa. When an intention to do a physical activity arises, together with it arises Chittaja Rūpas with abundant Vayu in the parts of the body that are intended to be moved. The element present in those material clusters is called Chitta Kiriya Vayu Dhatu. They create the force which can move the physical body. They create the force which can move the physical body. Though Kalapas with abundant Vayu can move the body, for the movement to become effective, the body has to move as intended by the mind. So if for this effectiveness, to maintain the effectiveness, for us to behave as we think, so this Vayu Dhatu is creating the pressure. It can move the body, but still it has to behave according to the intention. Right? In other words, the body parts must move towards the direction intended by the mind. To facilitate movement according to the volition, a slight modification occurs in the Chitta Kiriya Vayu Dhatu. This modification caused by the mentalities which had the intention to move is called kaya viññatti. So this modification which happens due to the intention is called kaya viññatti. It should be noted that though kaya viññatti occurs with chitta kriya vayudhatu, it vanishes with the chitta without staying for 17 mind mode. This is the next fundamental. Though this modification is owing to the chitta, but it disappears together with the chitta. Instead of saying vanishing, it's better to say disappearing, right? Vanishing, we can still use the word vanishing, but it may imply an idea that the kaya viññatti is another element which has arising and passing away. Rather than saying that it has arising and passing away, it's better to say kaya viññatti happens, it's an influence on the Rūpa by the chitta, and it disappears with the chitta. But still we can use the word vanish, since in some Abhidhamma text, in one sense, it's been used as referred to as an ultimate reality. Then the remaining Rūpas of the Kalapas where viññatti occurred exist for another 16 mind moments after the viññatti has vanished. So it may exist. The other Rūpas may exist for another 16 mind moments. So there are two types of Rūpa Kalapas that arise with viññatti: kaya viññatti navaka kalapa and kaya viññatti lahutadi dwadasaka kalapa. We have studied this in the Chittaja Kalapa. The term kaya viññatti has few definitions in Theravada. Following are two. The two definitions are, now this kaya, now think about a person, observer. He's an observer, right? Observer. So now this person is looking the B is looking what A has been doing. Think that the A was hitting something or to crushing a certain animal, killing a certain animal. While the animal is there, he was making such a gesture. Now the B is observing this. He observed the body is moving and he is crushing a certain animal. So looking at this activity, it's obvious the B can judge what was the intention of A. He was not having a compassionate thought on the living being, otherwise he would not crush the being, obviously. So knowing that he was crushing it, seeing that he was crushing with the awareness that there's a living being, and with the intention of making such a strong force that the being could not bear, right? For example, the same crush, same hit, if we make on an elephant, it's a different intention. Obviously it's a different intention. A person would not hit an elephant in this way to kill it, because obviously we know that doesn't suffice to killing an elephant. But if someone press the same force on an insect, that's enough, because the person knows that's enough to kill the insect, right? So knowing that there are many conditions that we consider while making a decision, even we are not that much analytical, even though we don't feel such an analysis at that very moment, there are many conditions that support our decision. So philosophically, these are called unconsciously taken decisions. Unconsciously, right? Because for example, if we see someone hitting a child for his wrongdoing, and then same force, if we see the person hitting a mosquito, obviously we know that intentions were different, right? In the first case, surely the teacher or the parent didn't have intention of killing the child, though it was the same force was enforced. But if someone hit in the same manner hit a mosquito, it's very obvious to us intention was to kill it. So how could we differentiate? Did we have such an analysis while we see these two incidents? Still we get two different thoughts, but was it because we had such an analysis that this force is not enough to kill the child, so it should be it is something to punish it, and then the force put on the mosquito is enough to kill it, so that's why it is an act of killing. We don't have such analysis. Naturally it comes to us because we have fed ourselves. We know this knowledge is within us. This knowledge is within us. So that's why in philosophically some says even unconsciously we make decisions. In the Theravada perspective, we have to explain it based on causality, how mind is influencing other minds. But still it's unconscious. We are not aware of our decision making, right? So anyway, this is a different deep topic to be discussed in the mental classes of mentality. Then now the observer sees this activity. Then now imagine our example was he's crushing on a insect on the wall. So due to this observing, he guesses the intention. He knows he was killed. Then obviously, if you were a Buddhist and one of your Buddhist friends did it, obviously the question you would ask is, why did you kill it? You are not going to ask, why did you hit it? No. Why did you kill the insect? If the same was done to a child, then we had, why did you hit the child? Intention of hitting and intention of killing was different. So now forget about the hitting intention. But just by seeing this, we guess the intention, killing intention. Intention of killing. Now Theravada's explanation. One would say you don't need this explanation because if the mind is acting if the mind is capable of making the body to move, then there's nothing to analyze. We don't need any intermediate reality for this. Why? We had an intention to kill and we made the physical activity which is enough to kill the insect. Okay, so we obviously see he's aware, he's a conscious being, he knows what is the force required to kill the insect. So he deliberately made that effort, made that force. Seeing that, we understand, okay, his intention was to kill the being. Now, Theravadians think about this intermediate stage. Since the intention cannot kill, cannot make a physical movement, due to intention, some vayu has to happen, vayu dhatu has to arise, and those vayu has to behave according to the intention. If they did not behave according to the intention, we'll never be able to judge the actual intention of the doer. Now think about a hypothetical scenario. Think this was a robot. The software or the mechanism is going on, functioning is going on. Software, we don't call it a non-physical entity. We cannot call it a non-physical entity to be true. It's something, it's also based on hardware when the Rūpa is interacting, right? But it's based on the pattern. It can, when they act as a unit, it can perform certain functions of the physicality. There's a very complicated issue how the software is acting on the hardware. At the same time, software depending on the hardware. But it is not equal to mind and body interaction. No, because mind is a different element from the body according to Theravada teachings. Now, imagine it was something like that. Imagine if the software is jammed, what happens? We give a certain input and we get a different output, unexpected output. To a robot, we say normally go and do this. If the software has a bug or virus, whatever, we know if we give this input, the robot should be acting in this way. But now it's acting weirdly. Then we'll be unable to judge what is going on. We know there's something wrong inside. Because it's not acting as we expected, as it has been programmed. It is being programmed. If you order the robot, go and bring me some water, it should go to the cupboard or the kitchen and take a glass of water, fill it with water and bring it to me. That is how it was programmed. But now imagine when I say to bring water, it takes a broom and starts sweeping the room, then we find out something wrong is there. Then we will not be able to predict what is going to happen. So we know something is wrong. Then we go to the electrician or the engineer and start to fix the problem. Now think, if the body was not moving according to the intention, if the body was not moving according to the intentions. When the body has the intention to stand and the mind has the intention to stand, mind has the intention, if the body was lying down, when the mind has a different intention, the body was doing something else, then we will never be able to guess the intention of the doer. Then we have to always ask the person, what was your intention? What was your intention? We will never be able to judge from. The same thing happens when we are speaking also. Even listening to the tone of a person, we judge his intentions. Whether he was angry or whether he was irritated or whether he liked us, we can easily judge with the tone. There can be misunderstandings. Obviously, not everything is accurate. If you are able to read the intention as it is, there will not be misunderstandings in the world, obviously. And it's also an assumption. There are few steps involved. So obviously, faults can happen. Now, if still we know the majority of our activities are according to our intentions, and we know it by practical experience. Now, in the bodily activities has to happen based on the intention. So, what reality facilitates this? Intention creates Vayo Dhatu, and Vayo Dhatu behaves according to the mind. We know this phenomena because we have experienced within ourselves. When I have the intention to pick this paper, the body picks it. When I have the intention to say I am, the words are uttered in this way. When I have intention to go and sit to stop the lecture, my body would stop speaking. So this shows that our body is behaving according to our mind. Now, so seeing this intention, seeing this activity, we will be able to guess the intention, but there should be an intermediate stage. What is that? Because we know means actually what is happening is air is creating a pressure for the activity, and that air has to move according to the intention. Only then we will be able to guess this relationship. If we just remove this intermediate stage, like Cartesian souls, they would say the intention has the ability to do the activity, then still we can guess the person, guess the intention. But as Theravadians explain, there is an intermediate stage. So who has contributed to this activity? Now, who is the real contributor for the observer to understand the intention? He had the intention, mere intention couldn't do the physical activity, and the body moved according to the intention due to Kaya Viññatti. It's not due to Vayo Dhatu. Vayo Dhatu was the energy. Vayo Dhatu gave the force required for the activity. But the activity happened according to the intention because of Viññatti. So, in order to, while we are guessing the person's intention, Viññatti is the facilitator, even though the observer is not aware of it. Even though the observer is not aware of it. Normally, it is said in Patthana, if a lion is killing a deer, the object of the lion is the Jivitindriya, life faculty of the deer. The lion has no Abhidhamma knowledge, right? That's why after that deer is dead, it doesn't keep on killing it. It doesn't keep on biting it. The lion knows it's dead. What does it mean in ultimate sense? It's aware that the life faculty is no more. Life faculty is not there anymore. He doesn't know it technically, but he knows it's not living. So the idea of living comes when we feel, when our consciousness is in contact with the life faculty. That's how Theravada explains it. Still, there can be misunderstandings. Sometimes we may think somebody is dead while he's not actually not dead. Yeah, things can happen. While we may think someone is alive while he's actually dead, these things do happen, right? So anyway, so therefore, viññatti is the reason for the observer to know the intention. So viññatti doesn't have a desire to let the doer's intention to be known, to make the doer's intention obvious to the observer. No. Viññatti doesn't have such a desire. But still, observer knows the intention of the doer through viññatti, based on viññatti. We term this modification as viññatti, implying that it is the one who expresses the wish or the desire of the doer. Not the wish, actually, desire of the doer. That's the terminology of viññatti. Then another definition of viññatti. Another definition of viññatti is this viññatti 4.2.2, page number 2, top 4.2.2. Wise ones can understand the existence of kaya viññatti by observing the moving limbs and feeling the touching limbs. Even with touch, we can guess the viññatti, because we know if someone is touching us, what type of intention is there. Based on it, the term viññatti is also defined as the matter that can be known by wise by observing the moving limbs and feeling the touching limbs. Right? That's the second definition. The first definition is, you can see the page number 1, 2.4.1. This modification of chitta vayu dhatu facilitates others to guess the intention of the one who does the physical activity. So viññatti helps the observer to know the intention of the doer. The second definition is viññatti is known through the moving limbs by the wise. Right? So these both definitions are given in our literature. Right? So then viññatti is never an object of chakku viññāna. Viññatti is never an object of chakku viññāna. What we see, the observer sees the color moving. Then as a secondary step, the person starts to know the viññatti. Then having known the viññatti intention, first observer sees the color, then another mind-over process goes, just retaking that same color. Then in the process, there are many vitis going on, but if we just summarize the processes that are required to know the intention, seeing the color, the chakku viññāna viti sees the color, then it will be recaptured, retaken by a manodvarika viti. Then the mind takes the intention, kaya viññatti as the object, even though we are not aware of that. Then the intention is guessed. That's how the Abhidhamma books explain this process of knowing the intention of the doer seeing the physical activities. I have given it in a chart. You can go to page number 3. Through seeing, present color is known through chakku viññāna viti, pachukpanna vanna rūpa. Then the atita color is seen by another mind-over process. Then the third viti knows the kaya viññatti. The object of the process is kaya viññatti. Then abhikkamanādi cittang, the mind which made the physical movement, such as going forth and pacing backwards, going up and down. He is meditating, his intention is to do this, is known with the mind. Right? The same thing happens with the physical touch. Then the kaya viññatti is a modification that occurs within the vayo dhatu as a result of mental activities driven by the desire to perform physical actions. It's not all consciousness do not produce viññatti in vayo dhatu. It's produced by consciousness that has a desire to perform, driven by the desire to perform physical actions. Consequently, it is not an concretely produced matter. It is considered an anippana rūpa. However, it is important to know that vayo dhatu itself, which undergoes this modification, is indeed a concrete and concretely produced, a concretely produced matter, known as chittaja rūpas. Then further, according to Dhammasangani commentary, kaya viññatti is not a real mind-born matter. It's not an actual mind-born matter, but it can be termed as such in other manners. Because Dhammasangani states that, commentary says no, it's not a actually mind-born matter. Kaya viññatti is not an ultimate reality. The Mulatika confirms this. However, it is not a panyati as well. In the categorization of Nyaya Mandala the object range of the Buddha, Samma Sambuddha, it is included in the group of Vikara. We have five types of objects of Neyya Mandala: Sankhara, Vikara, Lakkana, Panyati, Nibbana. So it's included in the Vikara. Even though Kaya Viññāti is not an ultimate reality, it is one of the major reasons for beings to have the Karaka Ditti. We have the view that there is someone inside performing activities as desires, that person is I. So why that Karaka Ditti? One of the many reasons that causes Karaka Ditti is our physical activities happens according to our desires. So then we believe that I think and I act upon my thinking, upon my intentions. So technically, theoretically, it is possible because Kaya Viññāti is there. Kaya Viññāti bridges this. So intention and the physical activity. If things does not happen according to our desire, there's a very less possibility, it's very unlikely that we will develop strong Karaka Ditti within us. Therefore, Viññāti is also one of the major reasons why we have Karaka Ditti. Karaka Ditti is the wrong view of a doer. There is someone who is acting, who is working inside the body. Late Renukani Chandavena Mahathera give the following simile. It is the helm wheel of a ship. Helm wheel of a ship. Ship moves. A ship moves. Now there is an engine inside. With the power of the engine, ship moves when it starts to work. So the force is created by the engine. But the ship, in order for the ship to direct toward the sailor's destination, intended destination, it has to be steered towards the intended destination. The helm wheel is the steering wheel of a ship. It has to be steered or turned. Then we can steer the ship towards our intended direction. So sailor is like the consciousness, the body is like the ship, and the helm wheel is like the Kaya Viññāti. Kaya Viññāti. So Kaya Viññāti modifies Chitta Vayu, so the entire body starts to move towards that direction. Right? So it's also something easy to understand. Then, it's repeated actually. The mechanism of Chitta Rupa, Kaya Viññāti performing activities, I have already explained that. Now, this is the mechanism. So the commentary says, the Dhammasangani commentary says, now, when does the actual movement happens? Actual movement means, now, the body, think about this body part, that to be moved. So this body part is made out of particles. This body part is made out of particles, kalapas. And when the intention arises, Vayo Dhatu, abandon Vayo Dhatu. Now Vayo Dhatu arises in this limb, which is drawn in yellow color. Now, when does the actual movement happens? According to the commentaries, now movement always happens with Manodvarika Vitis, Manodvara Vajjana. There are 7 javanas. Right, and Tadalamana. Tadalamana are not involved in the movement. Manodvara Vajjana is. Anyway, they are producing Chitta Rupas. Every javana is producing Chitta Rupa. So, till the 6th javana, Chitta Rupas are produced at the same location where the body was. Now, with the 7th javana, what happens? They start to arise in a new location. They start to arise in a new location. Right? So, then when the physical body is moving, the new kalapas, which the kalapas of the limb the Utuja Kalapas also starts to arise, the new Kalapas, in a different location. So any Kalapa that arose at a certain location passes away in that same spot. Because the Theravada is advocating a momentariness of the momentary realities. So then when the new Kalapas arises little ahead, they will pass away in that same location. So what the commentary is saying, all the javanas in a viti produces chittajarupas, but they chittajarupas of all the 6 javanas happens at the same location where the body was, and then when the strength is accumulated, the new kalapas arise little bit ahead. 7 kalapas of the 7th javana arises little bit ahead. So likewise, the actual movement happens at the end of these VTs. So actual movement in Theravada teachings is the new kalapas arising in a different location. It's not the same kalapa moving. Kalapa rise and pass away on the same location which is where it happened. The new kalapa is happening little bit ahead. Then all the kalapas starts to arise. New kalapa starts to arise. Then again this new kalapas happens in another location. So likewise the movement happens. At the same time, the body, the physical structure is maintained. So that's why the bodies of rupas were very vital. They don't scatter. So likewise it starts to move. So every movement means kalapas happening in a new location. This phenomena is seen with the 7th javana only. 7th javana. The remaining 6, what do they do? They accumulate the force for this push. So this leads to another very high philosophical debate, like how could such a force get accumulated? What is this force, and so forth. Then Paramattha Dipani makes it a little bit more difficult for the in the philosophical angle. What the Paramattha Dipani says is, this kind of movements cannot happen with one viti. And that's also very logical. His argument is, if it happens with one viti, the beings would be moving, because given the speed of the chitta, as we explained in Abhidhamma, given the speed of the chitta, if physical movements could happen in such a sequence, such a speed, we'll be moving more likely, all the beings would be able to move like the people with psychic powers, Iddhimanta. They, according to our tradition, the psychic beings can just move very quickly in the space. So if movements could happen with one viti, it was enough for one viti to make this movement, then beings would be moving very fast. So he suggests the commentarial explanation should be understood as many vitis are occurring, and then kalapas gather, vayu kalapas gather, and their strength is accumulated. Then as a result, the body starts to move. Still, then the problem which occurs with Paramattha Dipani's explanation, problem is the difficulty of explanation, because we know that Rupa Kalapas disappear after every 17 mind moment. So when many vitis are happening, the previous kalapas produced by Vayu Kalapa produced by previous vitis have already disappeared. Then what is the necessary force for the latter kalapas to make the movement? So think 10 vitis have gone, and the 7th javana of the 10th VC is capable of making the movement. Because this example given, simile given in the commentaries is, think about a cart that is dragged by 7 horses. The first 6 horses make the pull, but though they pull, the cart is not dragged, because it can only be dragged by the 7 horsepower cart. So only when the 7th horse starts to drag, then what happens? The cart starts to move. the cart starts to move. So likewise, it's an accumulation. The commentary has talked about accumulation of force. Now, if that's so, if it is so, and if Paramatthadipani suggests that this movement has to happen with many VTs, think about the 7th Javana of the 10th VT. So it has to have that adequate force to move. That's why it takes 10 VTs. So while the 7th Javana of the 10th VT is happening, because all the Vayu Dhatu produced by all the 10 VTs are required for this movement. That's what this commentary simile is. So by the time the 7th Javana of the 10th VT arises, the Kalapas produced by previous 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, all VTs have disappeared. So what is the force? How could that force be accumulated? So then what happens is, the theory would be, fundamental theory would be, the force of the prior Kalapas are found or added to the following Kalapas. So there's an accumulation of force. It means the Vayu Dhatu Kalapas which arise later are capable of making more force on the surface of the Rūpa. Only then it can move. So even though Vayu Kalapas arise and pass away every 17 mind moments, their force gathers. So that's why the Kalapas of the 7th Javana of the last VT is capable of making the movement. Right? So that is another explanation. So why did we come to that many VT movement process? The argument is, can the body be moved just by one Chitta VT? Because given the speed of the VTs, it seems like improbable, because then the movements could happen very quickly. Even given the thing that the Kalapas are very tiny. Even given the fact that the Kalapas are very tiny. Because if you have to say one VT can make such movements, then it can lead to many other difficult questions. So it seems the Paramatthadipani's explanation is very logical in that sense. We need the support of many VTs to make a physical movement. But then what happens? We have to explain the phenomena of accumulation of force in it. Right? So that's how the Kaya Viññatti is functioning in according to Theravada teachings. So when the Chittaja body moves, the Utuja body, the Kalapas produced by other causes, also starts to move as something on the water travels with the movement of the water body. Right? When the Chittaja Kalapas move, the remaining Kalapas also starts to move. Moving means arising of new Kalapas in new locations. Yeah, so that will be the lecture here. So it was a repetition. I just repeated the previous lecture. I hope it was more useful, because I couldn't give a proper handout last time. It was not complete, and this handout is complete actually. And this Viññatti is what is responsible for the body to act according to the mind's desire. And it is also one of the major reasons why beings get the wrong view of Karaka Ditti. And we can guess the intention of other people by looking the way they are behaving. And another thing, vital thing, which I couldn't emphasize much in this lecture, but which I did in the previous lecture, this ability of us, our ability to guess others' intention is mainly basically based on our experience of our bodies moving according to our desires. So that's how we'll be able to guess the intention of other beings as well. So yeah, so then we also explain the mechanism, and Viññatti not being a concretely produced matter, but which is very vital in our activities. And also we need to know is also called the Kammadwara. Kammadwara means it is the main reason. Dwara means the reason actually. Reason for the Kaya Kammadwara, physical activities. Right? So next day we are going to learn about Vachi Viññatti. Yeah.
Thank you very much for another excellent explanation of deep Dhamma factors which are not known to us. And also I must beg your pardon if I sound aggressive sometimes in my tone. So please don't misunderstand and please forgive me if you feel so. Then having said that, today's question is, first question, I have 2 or 3 questions maybe. First question is, now what happens to the Rūpa Kalapa which disappears or decays? Because if you apply the conservation of mass theory, like conservation of energy, there is conservation of mass. In a closed system, those are the 2 principles we apply when we do engineering analysis. So based on that, based on conservation of mass, Patavi, Apo, Tejo, Vayu, the 4 main elements should produce that mass. Therefore, even if a Rūpa Kalapa disappears, it cannot just disappear like that, because that material content in it has to be producing something else. So my question is, irrespective of Chittaja Rūpa Kalapa, in any type of Rūpa Kalapa, whatever that disappears provides material in recycling form. This is natural recycling. In a form of recycling to produce other kalapas. Can we take it like that?
Yes, that's how we normally know according to science. But that's the thing here. Theravada, if I very strictly adhere to the Theravada fundamentals in explaining the Dhamma, there is no way to explain this theory, to show this. What the book says is it completely disappears, it vanishes. And yeah, so the kalapa which disappears, it disappears and a new kalapa happens. But there is a sort of a conservation in terms of the lineage. Now, when the earth is burned or completely destroyed, there will be a period, a very long period, where there is no world in the area where the earth was located. So we may say it's an empty space, or it's just empty of any world, earth. Then as we follow the Abhidhamma explanations, and as Venerable Lady Sayadaw has suggested, and which has to be correct according to fundamentals, if we adhere to the Theravada fundamentals. So the kalapas which burnt, they got destroyed, but it doesn't mean that the lineage is broken. So kalapa, even though it's been affected by fire, it transforms into another form. Like when we burn something, it turns into ash, charcoal, and some part turns into air. So it's a sort of a dissolvement, right? So the bondages are broken, and the firewood or the something that is burned turns into a different form, air or something else. So in terms of explaining the destruction of the world, the tradition says the kalapas, the hard kalapas, the kalapas of earth have turned into a different form. So they were found even in the empty space. Empty space means it's not completely empty. These particles were found in these Rūpa Kalapas. Their lineage is still found, but in a subtle form. Like we burn something and in a closed system, I think you know it very well, and now we have gas only. So, but the gas is produced, was what was there as a solid thing. We know that. So likewise, when the earth is burned, those particles remain in the space in a different form, and those were the same lineage of those particles. Those particles which were in a lineage got formed back as an earth. So that's what is happening according to Theravada tradition. So there is no complete destruction of the lineage. So it agrees to some extent with the conservation of energy, conservation of mass actually, right? So then the problem happens is the momentary rising and falling away of the kalapas. So momentary rising and falling away of kalapas what the tradition says, it completely vanishes. Before it vanishes, a new kalapa happens. Then now, next point is, now if it was like, because according to the tradition, the lineage is not broken. A solid thing is burnt. Solid. Think this is earth. When it is burned, then it turns into a, rather than saying a gas, they never said it as gas, but sort of a subtle form. We know something, we burn something in an enclosed system, we in the end we get some gases. So likewise, when the earth is burnt, in that same area, those particles exist in a different way. So what is happening is, these particles, now if this was a particle, the second particle, third particle, fifth particle. So fifth particle is affected by fire. Then the sixth particle which arises is in a different form. This was a solid and this is a gas. So the same lineage. So in one sense, then what happened? This 6 remains, 7th, 8th, new kalapas remain for a long period. Then what happens? The atmosphere changes, things change, and then again it turns into, 11th one turns into solid. Not in an instant, but then, so this was 10 and 11. Then what happens, as long as the conditions are prevailing, they remain. Then again when the world destructs, burns, I may draw it in a different color, white color, okay. When it is affected by another cause, then it turns back again into gas. So this is how it goes. So this shows that because this was solid, this is gaseous or whatever particle, then again solid, again gas. So what happens is, the entire system, the energy and the mass is conserved, since if this was the earth, solid earth, and this is gas, I'm just using this for the easy convenience of conveying the idea, but it's not mentioned as a gas actually in the books, right? Some sort of a particle, it has to be a gas actually. Anyway, so now solid, gas, again the solid is produced. Now the tradition holds the idea they are very similar. The world cycles are very similar. The Jambudipa and the structure of the world, what the content is very similar, even in its locations, it says. Very similar to the previous earth. There can be slight changes, obviously, but overall is similar. So what does it mean? This mass has been conserved and a new world happens. So it was there actually in a different form. So when you look into this explanation, yes, conservation of energy and conservation of mass can be applied into this to some extent. There can be some arguments on this, but to some extent, because when you see the overall picture, okay, if solid is reproduced by the same gas, it means it was there already in a different form. Then comes, what happens is, now we zoom in, now we face the difficulty. Now number one is a kalapa, Utuja kalapa. After 17 mind moments, it passes away. Right? It happened newly and passes away. Now, if number two, if number two happened after one passed away, okay, still we can consider as chittas. So 1 and 2 didn't have any time gap. So the 1 suddenly 2 appears and 3 appears. Still we can imagine, okay, still the energy is maintained, conserved. But the problem is 2 happens before 1 passes away, just after 1 mind moment, in the second mind moment, or in the second sub-mind moment. There are 2 opinions on this, right? Mulatika in the second mind moment, according to commentary, second sub-mind mode, whatever it is. Now it happens. Then this also creates another kalapa while it's there. So likewise we get 51 types of kalapas at any given time. According to Mulatika, we get 16 types of kalapas because the lifespan is 16 mind moments. So the problem here is this is giving birth to a new kalapa. This also gives birth to a new kalapa. So where did this come from? So if we zoom in, we find a huge problem when we think about when we talk about the conservation of energy. But still someone can still argue at any given time we may find 51 types of kalapas, Utuja kalapas. That would not change. So that we can take it as a conservation. But where did it come from? The question is there. The second kalapa arises due to the first. It's not coming out of this first kalapa. It's a new arising. That's what the Madhyamika's argument. They were saying if the Theravadians advocate arising of a kalapa, you are talking about the new arising out of nothing, they said. It's a sayanjata, it's happening by itself. So this is matter. According to science, as far as I know, if matter is created newly, it has to be created through energy. It's very difficult to explain what is the transformation of energy into mass. It has happened in the very ancient times as soon as the Big Bang happened, according to their theories. Even now, mass can be produced through energy under some circumstances. So now there was something. There was something for the creation of matter according to science. So this link is not shown in Theravada. That's the point. This link is not shown in Theravada. But if you think about now I'm giving another perspective. Mentalities. Regarding anusaya, yes, there is some, regarding the arising of akusala cetasika, there was something. Appahina kelesa was there. Anusaya happened out of it. Sorry, chitta kelesa happened. The anusaya is arising as a kelesa. Vipaka is an outcome of the karma force. So we are talking about a substantial, not material substance. Something was there for something to happen. But when it comes to Kiriya Chittas, when we come to Kusala Chittas, we don't have such thing. Vipaka and Akusalas, yes. According to tradition, there was. But still one can say the previous Chitta, the momentum of the previous Chitta was there, so a new Chitta was born, and still it doesn't apply to it is not applicable to the conservation of energy because it's a non-material element. So it's not in our discussion. But still, Anusaya and Akusala and Vipakas are coming from some sort of substantial reality which existed prior to their arising. But regarding Rūpas, if we adhere to the tradition, we don't find any surface out of which it can happen. Then where did it come from? Did it come from here? No. If it came out of here, then it's like two was already existing in one. Then how did two happen? If there was no such an energy field, then two has to happen out of nothing. It's a creation of mass. So scientifically, now the problem is if someone applies science here, you cannot create mass out of nothing, there should be energy. Then the question goes to the Big Bang. Yes, obviously energy happened out of nothing, the Big Bang theory. Yeah, so singularity was there. We are not able to explain what the singularity was. So anyhow, some scientists believe everything happened out of nothing. And we have the plus and minus forces, the mass, and it comes together. It has come if you gather all these, it would add up to be zero. That's how some theories work. So as you said, this is why if you're talking about the lineage, yes, conservation of mass, energy can be explained within the literature. How it happens, there will be arguments. What is the world, what is the structure of the world, what is happening? There will be arguments, but The gist of the theory is conservation of energy and conservation of mass actually. I'm not talking about energy. Mass is clearly means there are many evidences to say that it has been advocated in a different way. But when you zoom into each and every kalapa, this problem occurs. But another thing to think is at any given time, we have 151 types of kalapas. This doesn't change. This doesn't change. So one can bring an argument from Theravada perspective in order to match science. We can bring this as a one quantum packet. This, whatever happens, is within this range. Yes, we will not be able to explain what is happening, how the Rūpa arose and all these, but if you think there are just 51 types of kalapas. So it's a fixed thing, because when this kalapa passes away, a new kalapa is arising. So the type 51 is always preserved. Then what, as for example, I'm just giving a clue, when relativity works for bigger objects, they're not able to explain what's happening in the quantum level. Relativity doesn't apply to the quantum level because it's unpredictable. Quantum physics doesn't apply to bigger objects because we can easily predict what is happening in the bigger objects. But still, both are proven. So that's why they are thinking about string theory or whatever to mix them. None of them has been successful so far. In the same way, momentary existence, if you apply the conservation of energy, no, impossible. To my understanding, it's impossible. But if you take the packet of 51 types of kalapas, yes, the number of kalapas is fixed, so it would not change. Then lineage, obviously it's shown. Shown means not proven. The literature contains the information. So it's a very nice topic. I don't know whether I gave a better answer for that, because I have limited knowledge in science. My knowledge in Theravada, I try to apply them as your question came. So that would be my explanation.
Thank you very much. But you gave me the required answer, because I did not know about the 51 types of kalapa existing in that manner. Because that is really the answer as I can see. Because one thing, at any time during the lifetime of a person, those 51 kalapas has to exist in some form.
Yes.
So, second thing is, which you did not mention, is the quantity of the different types. Quantity of the different types can change, and that composition can change within the system. Otherwise, I mean, we can't have different iriyapada. Because when we are sleeping, we may not be physically moving anything. So at that time, we spend very little energy as such, other than for essential activities inside the body. So that may be a different combination of the 51 type. Or when we are walking, it's a different combination. When we are sitting, it's another combination. Likewise, at different activities of the body, it will be different. Why I am putting up this theory is that helps to understand the Chitta Kiriya Vayu Dhatu, how it can move the body. Because you said it's a Chittaja Rūpa Kalapa. That's again a very important point. Because you said, unlike the other Chittaja Rūpas, the Chitta Kiriya Vayu Dhatu produces a 17 mind movement Kalapa. So therefore, it has a way of rising in different parts of the body, which need to be moved according to the intention and causing the required pressure. And that way, it can transfer the energy as well, because Vayu contains more energy according to science. I don't know, according to Theravada how it will be, but usually particles of gas contains more energy. That is why when you heat up ice, it becomes water, and the water is heated and it becomes steam. And steam contains energy, and that is what is used in a steam engine. So that is my engineering understanding, not the Dhamma understanding. in that manner, the Chitta Kriya Vayu Dhatu could enter the different Rupa Kalapas in the different parts of the physical body, and it can cause the pose for the required movement. That is the scientific explanation. And the other explanation you gave about that seventh mind moment, that seventh Javana mind moment, producing certain kalapas outside that initial place is also a very interesting, very good explanation. Then subsequently, what you said was that every, according to a different tika, you said it is not one chitta-viti, but several chitta-vitis also get added. That is also a valid argument, valid factor, because to move your hand or leg, it can't be one set of chitta kala, Rūpa kala. The Rūpa kala occupies only a very small portion. It's a minute actually. So there are so many particles all over the body in your, if you want to make a movement, and therefore several chitta-vitis are required for creating, because one chitta-viti may produce only one set.
No, one chitta-viti is capable of producing kalapa in the whole body. One chitta is capable of producing rupa in the whole body. What Sayadaw is suggesting is that is not sufficient enough to make the movement. If it was sufficient enough, we would be moving very fast.
Yeah, but Chitta Kriya Vayu Dhatu is the one which really produces the energy. That's my understanding.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
But one VT can produce. It's not only the quantity what matters in that sense. It produces in the entire body, but it's not enough for the production. That's what it is. So examine. So
I have one more point. That is Chitta Kriya Vayu Dhatu is also consists of all four main elements.
Yes.
It has to have Patavi, Apo, Tejo, Vayu. Probably the combination, the ratios are different, and that is why it has more Vayu, and it is called Chitta Kriya Vayu Dhatu. And once it enters between the other kalapas, I think it is possible because Avakasha Dhatu is also there. So when it enters between those Avakasha space, then it can cause the movement. First it causes the vinyati and then the movement.
Yeah, the one thing to say is now regarding the conservation of energy, as we discussed on this issue, when it comes to Chitta Kriya Vayu Dhatu, the production of Chitta Kriya Vayu Dhatu, this is the issue, this is one of the issues that if you are talking about only Tejo, Utuja Rupas, yes, we may be able to explain the conservation of energy to some extent. But the problem comes when Chitta Kriya Vayu Dhatu enters the scenario. Because you are adding the quantity, as you said. Utuja Rupas, quantity wise, if we add, it's not possible because exponential growth has to happen in the physical bodies that we experience. So Utuja Rupas cannot, the quantity has to remain as it is. A slight change is possible, but within the 51 types, it has to be there. Because if one Utuja Rupa produces two kalapas even, the exponential growth has to happen because within a very few moments, the bodies have to grow in double size. But when it comes to Chittaja Vayu, now this is the point here. Chittaja Vayu is produced all the time in the body, and they also, we may say that they also have a certain limit because except Dipancha Vijnana, Chitta Kriya Vayu Dhatu, Chittaja Rupas are produced in our body all the time. So their quantity also remains the same in that sense. But when we are making a movement, there are two possibilities that we can think about this. Kaya Vinyati, the Javana Chittas, now every Chitta produces Chittaja Rupas. The Chittaja Rupa produced by Javana Chitta, the quantity wise they are the same because always Chitta Rupas are produced in the body while we are sleeping, while we are walking and all. But those Rupas have a higher capacity than the other Rupas. The one way of explaining this. Then we can still maintain to the conservation of energy theory because at any given time, except very few mind moments, few mind moments. The kalapa, the quantity of chittaja kalapas in the body are also the same. Why is that? Every chitta is producing chitta rupa all over the body, not in one place. Then, so when it comes to, that's why we said before, bhavanga chittas do produce chitta rupas, but they are unable to move the body. Some rupas, other chittas produce chitta rupas, but the chitta rupas produced by bhavanga is even unable to maintain the bodily posture. Chitta rupa produced by appana chittas are capable of maintaining the body's posture. Chitta rupas produced by kusala chittas are also capable of moving the body. So one way to look into this is the quantity is same, but the capacity of the rupas change based on the influence of the chitta, the strength of the chitta. The other way to look into this is, while every chitta is producing some amount of chitta rupas, when it comes to bhavangas, three types of chittas which cannot make any physical movement or maintain the gaze posture, which can maintain the posture only, we can make a physical movement also. So one way of looking into this is the quantity increases. The quantity increases and then the movement happens or the posture is maintained. So then still the question comes, when the quantity increases, so there is a quantity wise up and down which would affect the conservation of energy theory, because there has to be some rupa which has come newly and just vanishes due to the influence of the consciousness. But another way to look into this is, because it's not clearly explained in the books, chittas are producing chitta rupas all the time, the quantity remains the same, while capacity of those rupas are higher if they are due to their cause, because if the phala, the result effect is affected by the cause. So if it is produced by a very strong chitta, that kalapa is capable of making a better impact on the rupas. So these are the two ways that we need to look into this, because quantity wise, the utuja kalapas, the quantity, there are two types of utuja kalapas, these which I shall explain later in the coming lessons. First type of utuja kalapas, quantity has to remain as it is, because if it starts to increase, the exponential growth, it's not practical at all. Then the number of chittaja kalapas, we can say quantity wise it increases, then it surely would affect the conservation of energy theory. But another way to look into this is chitta rupas are constant. Then comes the problem, when the body grows, the number of chitta kalapas also increases with that. There's another way to problem where these kalapas are increasing, how these new kalapas have occurred. So there are new ways to look into this. So therefore, if we bring the quantity into this aspect, still it will greatly affect the conservation of energy theory, as far as I understand.
Sorry, but I have to say one more thing, that is about the oja, because actually the four main elements do not exist only in that. Always Suddhashtaka is probably the basis of all the Rūpa Kalapa. So in the Suddhashtaka you have oja. Oja is really the one which brings Kabalinkara Ahara from outside. And that is energy as far as when you look at it from scientific point of view. And we know after physical activity we feel hungry. So naturally we look for more Kapalinkara Ahara and water, and even breathing is part of that energy. So with that, actually it is difficult to draw a system diagram and say this is how with only if you draw the system boundaries you can define conservation of energy. So it is very difficult to do that with the human body, and therefore I think the explanations you are giving are very reasonable and very acceptable.
Okay, thank you, Sad.
Hello, Bante. I have two questions. So today my internet is very unstable, so I couldn't understand your explanations about the intentions when, you know, like the how to say, the Jeta Rūpa got modified by the intention when we had the intention to move, so therefore on the previous slide, and then like applying or modifying the rupas, and then all these kalapa get modified and therefore it's moved. However, it's only affect the first time moment, and the rest of them not get affected. Correct me if I heard it wrong, but I don't understand how it works, because I thought it like when it first gets modified by the mind, when we have the intentions, and then like let's say the first Rupa Kalapa got affected by that intentions, and then the second one, it will also be the derivative of that. How is it that is not getting any effect?
No. This is not the second kalapa. This is the same kalapa existing, right? So then the second chitta arises, the new kalapas arise, they will be affected by this chitta. But after that chitta, their effect is not found in those kalapas. So these are not second kalapas. These are the same kalapas existing after the viññati has disappeared.
So this is the first vitti?
No. One chitta produce many kalapas, right? One chitta, for example, if I draw it in here, one chitta produces many kalapas, right? Their influence is seen here, and then the next moment it disappears, chitta disappears, right? Chitta disappears, but the kalapas exist because they have 17 mind moments, right? So then that influence is not seen in them. For 17 mind moments, we don't see any influence in them, but it's been already modified. Then what happens? Chitta, this is one kalapa one. Then chitta 2 appears. They produce different kalapas. Its influence is seen here. Then next moment. Okay, so now, sorry, I have a call, that's why. Kalapas are affected by the chitta. Right? So the Kaya Viññati is seen here. Then the next, it passes away. Chitta arises and passes away, no? So that chitta passes away, and the effect is gone with the passing away. There is a child, I turned it.
Yeah, there was a cut.
Yes, I didn't say anything. Wait.
Can we just zoom in the first chitta?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I understood you right.
Right.
So let's say for the first chitta, right, there's 17 mind moments.
Rupas, yes, 17 mind moments.
Okay, for the rupas, right? So the very first effects when the chitta modifying that rupa, this is the very first mind moment.
Yeah.
And when we go to the second mind moment, third mind moments, and everything, it did not have the same effect as what you're saying.
Right.
And I thought that, let's say, the very first mind moment had the effect, so let's say it's called 1. I thought that the second mind moment, it would be like 1A, and then the third one would be 1B, because it would carry on, that's how, like, the effect. But it's not exactly the same, but it's still the derivative of the lineage of that effect on the rupas, no?
That's why I gave the simile. A child is looking at this direction. I change the child's direction. Now, afterwards, for example, first mind moment, the child was looking at this direction, and I changed it. Right? The second mind moment, now the child is looking at this direction. Third mind moment, it keeps on looking at the same direction because I have changed it. So this influence is found only in the first moment. I changed it and then I go away. So this is the viññati, the change which occurred by the chitta.
Yes.
Then it's gone. But the effect, it's been modified. It's still there. So the vayo is now pushing this direction only. But this influence of the chitta is not found in the second, third, fourth mind moments.
So what you say, the initial influence of the chitta is not found on the second mind movement.
No initial present influence of the chitta is not found. Like for example, I'm changing the child towards this. So the force, the change, twisting, everything, the force I'm putting was found in that moment only. Then I release it. So now it's been changed, but I'm not influencing it anymore. I have already influenced it.
Okay. So my understanding is this. So take only one chitta, the very first vidhi, okay? We're not talking about a certain vidhis or anything. At the very first moment when the impacts of the external, let's say the chitta impacting on it, then that is modifies and this had changed. But then that is stops right there. The second mind movement is not changed by that initial impact of the chitta, but it is modified by the change of the very first, like it's like the derivative of the sun, or the byproduct, the products of the first impact.
Correct.
Yes?
Yeah.
So let's say take the very first chitta, so the second mind moment would be, let's say, one age, and then the other one would be 1B. It's not from it's not from the original initial modifications of the mind, but because of that, therefore there's different the continuous modifications of the mind moments of the Rūpas continue.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Different means
it's not like it just but it just
different. Derivative. It's not a new reality which has happened. It's just a change of the reality has happened.
Okay. So then my second question would be, you were mentioning about the Jita Rūpa. And when we talked about how, Jeta having the intentions and making the movements, and that would be like the impacts of the Rūpas and thing. So then it's bring all together the creation of Jeta Rūpa, the production of it. Because the very definitions of Jeta Rūpa is Rūpa born from Jeta, right? So this means that the materiality born from the non-materiality. So then how is it even come to exist at all?
Yeah, that's philosophically is a big problem. Yeah, philosophically we are unable to explain this, but what it says like.
So we have to accept the fact that it's just like that.
Yeah, just like that. Just like
so
that.
If we just accept the fact that it's just like that, then why do we need even the bridge? Because right here you were talking about there's an intentions and there's these activities, and there's in the middle there's this intermission bridge where explaining how all these Jeta Rūpas and there's Vayo, Kalabas and everything to make the movement. So if we are just accepting the fact that, okay, there's this Rūpa born out of Jetas from materiality come to existence from the non-materiality, so why do we even need a bridge at all to explain these activities?
Yeah, that's something that I also need to ask from the tradition. So, that's the argument. If Chitta can produce Rūpa, why can't it just make the movement? Cause the physical to move. Another way just to think about it is the production of Rūpa and Rūpa causing the force onto another Rūpa. One can argue that these are two different things. So then the question comes: how could the material thing still happens with a non-material thing? We clearly say that consciousness cannot happen out of Rūpa only. No, it's not possible. It's not possible. That's why consciousness doesn't happen in these stuff. For a consciousness to happen, there should be another consciousness. But Theravadians advocate consciousness can produce Rūpa, but Rūpa cannot produce consciousness. Rūpa can just facilitate consciousness. Chakkupasada is supporting consciousness, but it's not producing consciousness. So then the question, one can argue the quality of the entities, complex and simple entities. Consciousness is a very complex entity. It has very diverse attributes within it. Chitta, Chetasika and all these. So it's possible for a simple reality to come due to a complex, from a complex entity. A complex entity is capable of producing a simple physical entity, but not a physical entity is able of producing a very complex entity, right? Like consciousness. There can be a argument on this. Then the question comes, it is just producing the entities, that's all, but is not capable of making a force and creating a physical change. Physical change is called causality. in philosophy. Causality always happens with physical attributes, physical properties. If there is no physical properties, no physical causing is possible. So therefore, one can still, the Theravadians can say, Chitta Rupas are not capable, Chitta is not capable of making a physical movement, but as a result, because of this complex reality, a non-complex reality such as Rūpa may occur, but is not capable of doing anything. Then what happens? This is moving by itself. This is moving by itself. Then what it does is, then still comes, isn't it making any change? Yes, it's influencing. It's influencing the kalapa itself, because this kalapa happened out of, from this chitta, and intention was to this direction. So the Rūpa happens with that influence. You cannot separate the two, chitta, the Rūpa, and the chitta. But the actual pressure is made by the kalapa. Actual pressure, the physical pressure is made by the kalapa. So what the chitta is doing, it's just producing, it's facilitating the production of chitta rupas, but the actual movements for the force for the movements has to come with the physical entity itself. So that's another way to think about it, but I do acknowledge your question. It still can be asked.
Okay, then, yeah. So given your information you was mentioning, and like you say, right, it's with the rupas, right? Like from the very existence, from the very formations of the chitta, it has to have rupa there?
No, when the chitta rupa arises, it arises from the chitta, right? Due to the chitta. So it's already influenced by the chitta. You cannot get rid of the influence.
Okay, so you're talking about the Jeta Rupa.
Yes.
Itself,
No.
Okay, because I thought you were saying that like, the Jeta have to exist with the Rupa, so it always have to
No,
be
that's
there.
not. No.
Okay, so I missed one point. Can we go back to my first question when we
actually,
talk about the moment?
Yes, is it okay? Okay. Okay, because I have to attend some.
Okay, so we have the 17 mind moments for the Rupa. So like the second, so let's say for the second Chitta Vitti to arise, so from that second moment, another Rupa lineage has arisen already, right? Can you go back to the previous slide, or whatever you call it, the board, the one that you just wrote earlier.
Yeah, okay, this one, okay, right, okay.
Okay, so this one, starting from this second one, then that effect is affected on the 17 from the 17 from the second mind moment of the very previous one.
No, this kalapa is produced by the second chitta. This kalapa is produced by the second chitta and is influenced.
That's right. But I'm saying because this rupas has been modified already, right? Let's just say when you change direction, the direction has been changed. But what I'm saying is it from the second moments of the first chitta, or is it changed, the modification? Where did it get its form from?
It's from the second chitta, not the second mind, not from this chitta. It's a production of this chitta. So this chitta has no influence on them. So this is a lineage produced by the second chitta. Third chitta may produce another rupa kalapas. That influence is by this.
I understand. What I'm saying is, let's say, giving your simile, right? You turn the child, and then now the first impact has gone, but the direction of the child looking has been modified or has been changed. So I'm just saying, at the second chitta, where is that modification from? Like, what is the origins of that modification?
The second chitta itself. Because first chitta influenced the second chitta, right? So if you have intention to move, this also has the same intention.
That's right, but I'm saying from that second chitta when it's arriving, Rupa, that's the modification from the second moment or from the 17 moments?
No. It's from the first this has its own 17 lifespan. It's a different set. So its first mind moment is influenced by its originating chitta. this chitta origin. So the same formula, this process, because this Rūpa arising due to...
Initial impacts already disappears. And then
No, that's the problem is these are two different kalapas. These are not the same. So these kalapas are produced by this chitta and their effect is found in the first mind moment, and now it's not there. So this is a different set of kalapas. It is produced by this second chitta and their influence is found in its first mind moment. This is a different kalapa.
Yes, I agree with you. My question is the influence, which of the mind moment of the first chitta influence on the second chitta? At the second mind moment or at the 17th mind moment?
What do you mean?
I understand there are two separate kalapas.
Okay.
Two separate chitta.
Right.
So the very first chitta has, arising vanishes.
Yeah. So?
And then the second chitta arises due to the first chitta. However, it will have the directions modified by the first chitta. What my question is, that modification, what is the origin of it? From the second moment of the first chitta or from the 17th moment of the first chitta?
I don't get your point. Because this is a separate chitta, no? So this is chitta viti, no? Chitta viti have the same intention. All the 7 chittas have the same intention. Right? They cannot change. So this chitta is an independent chitta. So think about, as this is occurring, this is the same occurring. Why you are trying to bring this here?
No, okay. So when you turn the child, right?
It's just we are turning this kalapa only. This kalapa has to be turned by this one. It's a different child. It's a different child. Okay.
It's a different movement. But the second chitta is turned by the first chitta, not by you.
No. Second chitta is not turned by this chitta. The whole viti has intention. It's not the second chitta is turned by this chitta. No. The whole viti has one intention. It's governed. The intention of the viti is different. It's not because of this chitta. The whole viti as a package. So whole viti has one intention. It's decided by the previous chitta. Like the many conditions. So this whole viti has an intention. It's not because of this chitta produced. No.
I'm talking about the modification. I'm not talking about the intention.
So the whole process has an intention. Every chitta has that intention. So that intention modifies the kalapa which it produced. That's it. It's nothing to say about this chitta influencing this chitta influencing. No. So this chitta produced one kalapa and it's influenced by this chitta. This chitta influences this kalapa. This influences this kalapa. So there is a common intention of the whole chittas.
Yes, but I'm talking about the modifications and the influence of the second chitta. Where is it the original from? And where is the origin of it?
Why? It's origin from the viti, no? So you're asking when did this get the intention?
No, not the intention. The modification.
So
the direction change.
This chitta.
And it's continuing that change.
This chitta produces this kalapa and it has an intention. Can you understand this has an intention? This has an intention, right? So as similar this intention influences this kalapa, similarly this intention influences this kalapa. Okay, we'll talk it next week then, because I am waiting, some devotees are waiting outside. So the thing is, we have to understand every chitta has its own intention and it is modifying its own rupa kalapa.
Yes, I agree that. But let's take the first one, the first chitta and the first.
Shall we talk it next week? Yeah, please, because I'm getting late. Yeah, thank you for that. Right,
okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll conclude the class, and next day I'll be talking about the Vachi Vinyati. Yes, we can discuss about this next week in the Q&A session. Thank you for your questions, and hope you enjoyed the session. So may this merit helps us to attain the liberation and also be a support for the sustaining of the Buddha Sasana. Buddha Sasanang Chirantittatu, Buddha Sasanang Chirantittatu, Buddha Sasanang Chirantittatu, Sadhu, Sadhu, Sadhu.